"You'll never get married, Jess. You're not what men want, you're just the warm-up act." That's what my sister whispered in my ear. Right after raising her glass for a heartfelt family toast. Right after locking eyes with my boyfriend and giving him that smile she thinks no man can resist. I stood there frozen, the rim of my champagne flute brushing my lip. My heart didn't sink. It clenched. That moment split something in me, not just anger, not just pain. It was realization. And maybe something colder underneath. But to really understand it, I have to take you back a bit. My name is Jessica Price. I'm 27, live in San Diego, and I work in HR for a tech startup that thinks ping pong tables and kombucha on tap make up for long hours. I'm pretty average by most standards: apartment, car, social life. I drink oat milk lattes. I watch YouTube deep dives at 2 a.m. I text people back, eventually. My sister Miranda? She's not average. She's the one who posts perfectly lit photos of brunch with my girls, even though I haven't been invited in 2 years. The one who once said, "I'd rather be overdressed than overlooked," and lives by that motto daily. When we were kids, she was the golden girl, straight teeth, straight A's, and straight into the spotlight. And me? I was the smart one. But smart doesn't get applause at family gatherings. It gets ignored. Or, in my case, insulted with a smile. Miranda has this way of delivering cruelty in gift wrap. Like she's doing you a favor by pointing out your flaws. "Just being honest," she says. "If I don't tell you, who will?" Apparently, everyone else figured I'd just take it. And I did. 4 years. Until I met Andrew. Andrew Jacobs walked into my life at a networking mixer I almost skipped. I was standing near the sad cheese plate, trying to balance my drink and my dignity, when he asked if I liked the Shins. That's all it took. He wasn't loud or flashy, he had this quiet way of seeing people. Like, really seeing them. And after 2 dates, he was making me laugh in that stupid, joyful, can't-breathe way I hadn't felt in years. So after about 2 months, I told my family. I wish I hadn't. Mom lit up, of course. A boyfriend. Finally. Like I'd just graduated from invisibility. Dad made a harmless joke about checking his credit score. But Miranda? She leaned across the table with a wineglass smile and said, "So, does he know about your weird little foot twitch when you're nervous? Or are you waiting to scare him off?" Everyone laughed. Everyone except Andrew. He reached for my hand under the table, just a light squeeze, but enough. That's when something inside Miranda shifted. I saw it. Her eyes tightened behind the mascara. A week later, she bumped into him at his gym. "Oh, it was nothing," she told me over the phone. He looked surprised to see me. I guess he didn't know I worked out there. Small world. But she doesn't work out there. She hates that gym. I remember because she called it a glorified garage with mirrors. Still, I let it go. I wanted to believe I was just being paranoid. But then the text started. At first, it was Miranda sending me screenshots of Andrew's Instagram likes. Just a heads up, he liked a bikini model's post from 2019. Maybe check in? Then she began dropping comments at brunch. If things don't work out with Andrew, I'd totally take a spin. Just kidding. Unless, you're cool with it? She'd laugh, sip her mimosa, and keep talking like she hadn't just thrown a grenade into the room. I brushed it off. Again. But Andrew didn't. One afternoon, we were eating tacos by the water when he set down his drink and said, "Your sister texts me." Like, a lot. My heart paused mid-chew. What kind of texts? She asked if I was really serious about you. Said you're the emotional one and might latch on too hard. She even sent a photo of you two from your birthday and said something like, "Bet you didn't know what you were signing up for." My stomach twisted. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I should have told you sooner. I just didn't want to make things worse." No, I said quietly. You did the right thing. And that's when something shifted in me. I stopped brushing things off. I started paying attention. I started noticing patterns. See, Miranda always recorded voice memos to herself. She said it helped her capture genius in real time. But I also noticed she kept them poorly organized. One time she played the wrong one at a family lunch, something about someone getting fat in the face but pretending it's contour. It wasn't me that time. But I remembered how her face froze. From that point on, I started listening more and talking less. The final break came 2 weeks later, at our cousin's engagement party. The room was filled with twinkling lights, glass clinks, and the smell of catered Italian food. Andrew looked amazing. We'd been having a great night. I actually felt happy. Like, fully happy. For the first time in a while. Then Miranda got the mic. Her speech was warm and polished. Classic Miranda. She toasted love, timing, and how the right person always finds you when you least expect it. Then she turned to me. And to my older sister Jessica, she said with a practiced pause. You've been such a role model in your own way. Strong, independent, and proof that there's hope even for the emotionally complex among us. Polite laughter. Some stifled snickers. But seriously, she added, if you can land a man, maybe the rest of us are overthinking things. Louder laughter. Champagne glasses clinked. Someone actually hooped. I felt my cheeks go numb. I didn't cry. I didn't move. But Andrew did. He stood up, slowly, then walked across the room and stood beside me, right there in front of everyone. He took my hand. Silence fell over the tables. That's enough, he said calmly. You don't get to humiliate her and call it a joke. Miranda's smile faltered. Just for a second. But she recovered fast. Relax, she said. It was a joke. Don't be so sensitive. He didn't answer her. He just turned back to me and said, let's go. And we did. We left the party. Drove in silence for 10 minutes before I finally whispered, thank you. He didn't say anything. Just squeezed my hand. I got home later that night, still wearing the dress I'd picked so carefully. I kicked off my shoes and lay on the couch in the dark. Then my phone buzzed. Instagram notification. I opened it and felt my heart stop. There was a photo. Miranda. Sitting at a rooftop bar. Smiling over a mimosa. And sitting beside her? Andrew. The caption read. Accidental brunch with my favorite surprise guest. Some people just have great timing winking face #Sundays. My entire body went cold. I stared at the screen. Then, in the comments, I saw someone ask. Wait, are you two dating now? Her reply. LOL no. I mean, not yet. But you never know. Jessica doesn't need to know everything winking face. That was it. That was the moment the fog cleared. Not just because of the post. But because of what I remembered from before, the voice memos. The little audio receipts she left scattered like breadcrumbs. Miranda thought she'd outplayed me. She didn't know I'd been listening. She didn't know what I'd already started recording. I stared at her comment for a long moment, then quietly set my phone down. And I smiled. Not because I wasn't hurting. But because the game had finally started. I didn't go to Miranda's birthday brunch. There was no dramatic announcement, no argument, no public refusal. I just didn't show up. For the first time in 27 years, I let a family celebration come and go without dragging myself through the performance of smiling through her digs and pretending they didn't land. And the wildest part? No one asked why. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even Miranda herself. She posted the usual spread of curated photos the next morning, a table full of friends in pastel dresses, that fake candid laughter, champagne mid-clink. I recognized half the faces. What I didn't recognize was the caption, surrounded by love, light, and loyalty. Grateful for the people who truly show up for you, and for those who teach you what real support looks like. It was subtle, but I'd known Miranda long enough to read between the lines. That caption wasn't for the world. It was for me. And if I had been the old version of myself, the one who still hoped she'd change, or felt guilty for not being the bigger person, I might have crumbled under it. But I didn't. I didn't respond. I didn't scroll through the comments. I didn't look at who liked it or who tagged me in defense. I simply muted her account and moved on with my day. That was the first thing I did for myself, fully and quietly. The second was moving out of my apartment. No big goodbye. No social media post. I just packed up what mattered, sold what didn't, and left the little one-bedroom that had been both my safe zone and my cage. I found a rental in a quieter part of town, a modest place above a florist shop that smelled like eucalyptus and fresh-cut stems when the wind came through the windows. No one knew where I went. That was intentional. My mother eventually found out, of course. She called about a month later under the pretense of checking in, but I could hear the edge in her voice when I mentioned I'd moved. "Oh," she said, and then after a beat, "Did something happen? You didn't say anything to anyone." "I didn't need to," I said, folding laundry with the phone on speaker. "I just needed less noise." She hesitated, then softened her tone. "Are you sure you're okay? You sound different." That made me pause. I suppose I did sound different. Like someone who had stopped waiting for apologies and had started making peace with reality. "I'm getting there," I said quietly. Finally. But peace didn't mean idleness. It meant clarity. And clarity has a way of making you see things in sharp relief, things you used to blur out of survival. It was during that first week in the new place that I started sorting through old backups on my laptop, not out of nostalgia, but because something Miranda once said had been echoing in my mind. Years ago, she joked at dinner that she kept all her voice memos like a diary of dirt, claiming they were better than screenshots because no one thinks to check them. At the time, it had seemed like another one of her dramatic flexes, but now? Now it felt like a breadcrumb worth following. I dug up an old shared iCloud folder my mom had used years ago to keep family files synced, recipes, holiday photos, school documents. And in one corner, nestled inside a forgotten zip file labeled M_voice, were over a dozen old memos Miranda had recorded and probably forgotten. Some were mundane, grocery lists, reminders. But a few? A few made my stomach flip. One from the week after that infamous brunch read, "Jess is already pulling away. Honestly, I thought she'd cling harder. Makes my job easier. Andrew's not texting back anymore though. Maybe I pushed too fast. Whatever. It's not like he was ever going to stay with her." I didn't react. I just saved it. Quietly. Methodically. Then I created a folder titled Recovery and started collecting. Therapy helped too, though I never announced it or labeled it as part of some healing journey. I just signed up for Thursday evening Zoom sessions with a therapist named Dana, who had a way of asking questions that felt less like prying and more like gentle nudges toward truth. During one session, I told her about the voice memos. About the feeling I got when I realized I'd been right all along. She nodded slowly, then said, "And how do you want to use that truth?" It wasn't a leading question. She wasn't pushing me toward revenge. But she also wasn't romanticizing forgiveness. I remember answering her carefully. "I don't want to use it to hurt her. I want to use it to stop her." Dana leaned back and said, "That's a powerful difference." Still, I knew that a plan needed more than a motive. It needed leverage. So I started studying. Late nights. Quietly. I revisited a hobby I'd abandoned in college, digital archiving and data forensics. At the time, I thought it was just nerdy curiosity. Now I realized it gave me the tools I needed to verify, authenticate, and, most importantly, trace patterns. I started organizing everything Miranda had ever sent me. Emails, texts, voice memos, social media posts. All in chronological order. It wasn't just collecting, it was building a map. And somewhere on that map, I knew I'd find the crack in her mask. Miranda, for her part, was still shining. At least on the surface. Through cousins and mutual friends, I learned she'd been promoted to some vaguely impressive title, director of brand partnerships at a mid-tier marketing firm downtown. She was hosting themed dinner parties, leading panels for women in media. Someone even told me she'd been nominated for a local Empowered Women Under 35 award. That one made me laugh. But what struck me most was that no one, not one person, reached out to ask if what happened between us was real. They all played it safe, assuming we'd just grown apart. Miranda was smart. She knew how to maintain the narrative. Her favorite move wasn't erasing me, it was rewriting me as irrelevant. One day, I received a text from Lauren, one of Miranda's oldest friends, and someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. "Hey Jess. Can I ask you something weird?" I stared at the screen before typing. "Always." She responded. "Did you really ghost everyone? Or was that just the story?" That gave me pause. I typed. "Define everyone." She replied. "Miranda said you disappeared after Andrew dumped you. That you shut down and started blocking people." I took a breath. Then I wrote. "Not exactly. But I'm curious why you're asking now." She told me she'd run into Andrew recently, a charity event, mutual friends. "He looked uncomfortable," she said. "Said he hadn't seen Miranda in months. Told someone, it got weird fast. Should have trusted my gut." And that's when I realized something. I hadn't lost Andrew. Miranda had scared him off. That photo at brunch? It wasn't a power move. It was desperation. He wasn't choosing her. He was trying to get away from both of us. That night, I printed that photo out and pinned it to my wall. Not because of him. But because it marked the moment Miranda overplayed her hand. The next day, I went into the coffee shop below my apartment and opened my laptop. I created a burner email address. I attached one of Miranda's voice memos, the one where she talked about manipulating Andrew, and I scheduled it. Not to send. Not yet. But to exist. Like a match, waiting for the right breeze. Later that week, I walked into a bookstore near the marina and heard someone say my name. I turned, and there he was. Andrew. He looked tired. Not unwell, just weighed down. His eyes flickered with surprise, then something like guilt. "Jess," he said. "Wow. You look," he hesitated, "different." I didn't smile. "That's the idea." He nodded, stepped forward. "Can we talk?" I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" He shoved his hands into his pockets. I was an idiot. I didn't know what Miranda was doing. Not until after that brunch. She tried to pull me into some kind of game, and I just stepped back. I didn't know how to handle it. "You disappeared," I said flatly. "That's how you handled it." He looked down. "I know. And I'm sorry." There was a beat of silence before I said, "Enjoy the bookstore." And I turned to leave. He called after me. "Jess, wait. You're not still mad, are you?" I didn't turn around. I just said, "Enjoy it while it lasts." He probably thought I meant the afternoon. The coffee. The sunlight. He had no idea I meant the illusion, the whole neat little reality Miranda had built, the one that was already starting to wobble under its own weight. That was the last time I looked back. It started with an email that wasn't meant for me. The subject line was dull, something like Q3 budget notes, draft, but when I opened it and saw Miranda's name in the CC field, I paused. The email had been forwarded from someone at Hartley Creative, and the only reason I received it at all was because a former coworker had mistakenly left me on an old thread we used to use for freelance project work. Pure coincidence. But what I saw made my breath catch. There was a line buried in the thread that read, AJ pushing back on initial budget. Claims verbal approval was never granted for new scope. Miranda confirmed it directly, need clarification. That was Andrew's initials. And that was Miranda, once again operating in the gray area between charm and deception. I stared at the message for a long time, weighing the feeling that always came right before action. It wasn't rage. It was deeper than that, like pressure under ice. Something ready to crack. I didn't forward the email, not right away. But I saved it, of course. Labeled it. Indexed it. That same afternoon, I added it to my timeline map, a document now stretching nearly 30 pages long, filled with everything from voice memos to deleted tweets, audio transcriptions, and posts Miranda probably didn't even remember writing. But this time, I didn't just file it. I acted. I created an anonymous inbox and composed a short message, just a few lines, clear and professional. I attached the clipped excerpt from Miranda's earlier internal message, the one where she admitted she'd smooth things over and fudge the details. I addressed it to Hartley Creative's HR team. The return address couldn't be traced. I didn't even stay logged in after hitting send. Just closed the laptop and waited. And that was the shift. Until now, I'd been watching, gathering, staying silent. But this was different. This was the first real push. And I felt it, that shift in energy, like something dormant finally waking up. 2 days later, Miranda posted a video that struck a different tone than her usual filtered confidence. She was in her car, speaking into her phone with what I'm sure she thought looked like breezy vulnerability. Just reminding myself, and maybe someone else out there, that when things get messy, it's a sign that growth is happening, she said, blinking hard, like she might cry. Not everyone will understand your process. And that's okay. The comments were full of supportive words from people who didn't know the full story. But I could tell. I knew. Something had landed. And it wasn't the only shift. That same week, Lauren, Miranda's ex-friend, the one who'd told me about Andrew resurfacing, reached out again. This time she wasn't cautious. She's unraveling, her text read. Panic energy. She's blaming interns for scheduling errors. Said someone hacked her inbox. No one believes it. I asked if she'd noticed anything specific, something that might explain the new spiral. Lauren replied. She keeps saying people are plotting against her. That someone's trying to tank her name. I didn't press. But it sounds paranoid. I read that message over and over, then turned off my phone and sat on the floor in my tiny apartment above the flower shop, staring out the window at the way the wind twisted the eucalyptus branches. For the first time, I didn't feel like the one in recovery. I felt like the one who'd stepped out of the storm while the person who created it was still spinning inside it. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I started taking more calculated steps. Not aggressive ones, just small, surgical moves. I reached out to Natalie again, the digital investigator. Asked her if she could extract metadata from some of Miranda's posted content, especially around the time she claimed to have signed Andrew's project. Natalie sent back timestamps, edit histories, and upload logs. It didn't take long to see that Miranda had posted content about the project before any official agreement had been signed. That meant she was claiming credit for something that didn't exist yet. I stored it all. The difference now was, I wasn't hoarding for the sake of holding on. I was stacking kindling. But even with all that prep, I nearly slipped. It happened one afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. I was meeting with Charisse, my lawyer, to go over a few final pieces of documentation. We were sitting near the back, hunched over a screen, when someone tapped my shoulder. It was Miranda's assistant. Well, former assistant. Mallory. I froze for a second, unsure how to read her expression. But she leaned in with a whisper. I didn't say anything. Just so you know. If she asks. Then she walked away. Charisse raised an eyebrow as I stared after her. Friend of yours? Not exactly, I said slowly. But maybe she's about to become one. That night, I didn't sleep well. Not because I was scared. Because I was close. That's when it becomes hardest to hold your composure, right before the moment breaks open. The next morning, I received an anonymous tip in the burner inbox. No name, no intro, just a subject line, Hartley press request. The body read, they're preparing a story about the AJ fallout. Internal source says your sister may be named. Timing unclear. Watch for leaks. My stomach didn't flip. My pulse didn't race. I just closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the window as the light hit the flowers downstairs and the shop owner moved buckets into the shade. That same afternoon, I walked by the marina, half for clarity, half out of habit. That's where I saw him. Andrew. Again. He looked different than last time, more tired, like the kind of tired that doesn't come from work. He noticed me before I could duck away. Called out, Jess. I stopped, reluctantly. He jogged over, breathless. You've been busy. I didn't say anything. Just looked at him. He nodded slowly, stuffing his hands into his jacket pockets. She told people you were trying to ruin her. Said you were obsessed. And you? I asked. Do you believe that? He shook his head. I think she's scared. And I think I let her manipulate both of us. There was silence. Then he said, I want to help. If there's anything I can do. I cut him off gently. There isn't. Not anymore. He looked down, and I could see the regret, real, but too late. You were a pawn, I added. So was I. But I'm not anymore. And I walked away. That was the last time I spoke to him. I had nothing left to prove to Andrew Jacobs. He wasn't the villain. He wasn't the prize. He was the reminder of how close I'd come to letting Miranda win. I got home that night and printed out one last document, a list of Miranda's speaking engagements. One in particular stood out, a networking summit for women in leadership, hosted by her company, with press in attendance and a livestream planned. That was the moment I knew. This wouldn't end quietly. It would end publicly. A week later, she showed up at my door. Not in full glam. Not in heels. Just jeans and an oversized sweater and sunglasses she didn't take off. She looked small. I need to talk to you, she said, voice brittle. Please. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. She took a deep breath. Someone's trying to sabotage me. I don't know who. But people at work are acting different. HR is investigating. My campaign with Andrew was pulled. And someone leaked my voice memo to a reporter. I didn't respond. She swallowed. Was it you? I stared at her for a moment. You know what's funny? She blinked. What? You always said I'd never get married. That I'd end up alone. She winced. I didn't mean that. It was just. You said it. Every birthday. Every holiday. You said it like a curse. She looked away. I was jealous, okay? That stopped me. Of what? You. You had integrity. People trusted you. I had charm. I had masks. And when I saw you with him, I wanted to tear it down. I studied her. There was something raw in her now, not performative, not polished. But I didn't trust it. Not fully. I'm not here to forgive you, I said. But I will say this, the storm you feel? It's not sabotage. It's just truth catching up to you. She said nothing. And then, without another word, she turned and walked away. As I watched her disappear down the sidewalk, I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. Because she thought that was the worst of it. And she had no idea what was still coming. Miranda toasted her own brilliance with a glass of rose and that little smirk she wore when she thought the room belonged to her. She was standing beneath a soft pink spotlight on a raised platform at the Willow and Rise Leadership Summit, a 2-day event full of panels, charcuterie boards, and carefully curated girlboss energy. She looked flawless, like she always did at the start of a performance. Her white blazer was pressed to perfection, her lipstick was bold but understated, and her opening line, "No one handed me this mic, I took it," landed with the kind of applause that makes egos float. She was riding high. She thought she had outlasted the whispers. The HR inquiry had gone quiet. Andrew hadn't spoken publicly. She believed whatever storm had rolled in had passed. That she'd bent it to her will like everything else. That's what made it perfect. Because I knew exactly what was about to happen. And so did the people sitting in the second row, the head of Hartley Creative's ethics board, the assistant editor of Brandwatch Weekly, and one quietly seething former junior associate named Mallory who now worked in event PR. I hadn't needed to plant her there. I'd just given her the truth and let her decide how to use it. The room was full of slow-bubbling anticipation. They didn't know it, but they could feel it. Something about the air had changed, a little too still, a little too expectant. And Miranda, being Miranda, mistook it for admiration. She clicked through her slideshow with absolute confidence. Brand milestones. Partnerships. Sound bites about authenticity. She even rolled a clip from an old podcast where she'd said, "Real leaders don't compete. They collaborate." A few women near the back nodded along, scribbling notes they'd probably never look at again. Then came the final slide, a clean white screen with her logo in the corner and her name in bold, black text. That was the cue. The projector blinked once. Then again. And then the slide disappeared entirely, replaced by a waveform graphic. The room fell quiet. Everyone thought it was a tech issue, until they heard the voice. Miranda's voice. Unfiltered. Unedited. Recorded without her knowing. Played loud enough that not even the ones pretending to check their phones could ignore it. You know what? She was never going to keep him. I mean, come on, Jessica's sweet, but she's boring. The kind of girl guys like for a month and forget by the holidays. I just sped things up. There was no music. No explanation. Just silence after the audio cut out. Thick and sharp like glass. I didn't move. I didn't need to. I'd never been more still in my life. I watched her face carefully from across the room. First confusion. Then recognition. Then, finally, panic. She turned to the tech table, hissing something to the AV manager who looked just as surprised as everyone else. A woman near the front whispered to her friend, who leaned away in discomfort. One of the sponsors stood up and slipped out the side door. And just like that, the air around her changed. The applause stopped. The admiration drained. The confidence on her face cracked so subtly most people wouldn't have caught it. But I did. It was the moment she realized someone had been waiting for this. Someone had watched her build the stage, just to pull the curtain back. She wrapped the segment in record time, voice faltering just once as she said thank you and disappeared off stage like a magician who'd fumbled the final trick. I waited 20 minutes before heading down the hall toward the VIP green room. She was standing outside it, arms folded, still holding her phone like it could save her. Her assistant wasn't there. No one was. Just her and the heavy quiet of consequence. When she saw me, her body tensed like she'd been hit with cold air. "What did you do?" she asked, voice low, sharp at the edges. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just said, what you always feared I would. She narrowed her eyes. You humiliated me. No, I said calmly. You did that. I just pressed play. Her jaw tightened, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in her that looked close to fear. Not because she thought I'd hurt her, she knew me better than that, but because she realized she'd finally lost control of the story. "I've worked my whole life for this," she said, like that was supposed to mean something. "I know," I replied. "And along the way, you worked even harder to tear me down for fun. Every party. Every family dinner. Every time you told someone I was too uptight or not built for love. You weren't just mean, Miranda. You made me your side project. So I made you mine." She laughed, brittle and desperate. "So what now? You want me to apologize? You want my job?" "I want you to understand what it feels like," I said, stepping just close enough for her to hear every word clearly. "You spent years making sure no one heard my voice. And now it's yours that ruined you." She looked away, blinking fast, and I knew she was holding back tears. Not out of regret. Out of rage. "There's more coming," I added quietly. "Not from me. Just from people who saw what you did to them, too." She whispered, "You're destroying everything." "No," I said softly. "I'm setting it straight." I left her there, not shattered, not screaming. Just exposed. It was better that way. People like Miranda crumble loud when someone's watching. But they collapse quietly when they realize no one's listening anymore. Over the next few weeks, the unraveling picked up speed. The leadership summit scrubbed her name from the speaker lineup. Not just this event, but the next two she was booked for. One of them replaced her with a diversity consultant who tweeted, "We don't platform cruelty in a pantsuit." That one went viral. Her brand partnerships fell apart one by one. A skincare label she'd featured on her Instagram posted a vague but pointed message, "We value integrity. Always have." She lost a pending deal with a mentorship platform when Mallory, now publicly distancing herself, provided internal emails showing Miranda instructed her to fudge collaboration stats. Her podcast vanished before its second episode. The production company pulled out, citing alignment concerns. Her agent dropped her the same week, issuing a one-line statement about pursuing other professional priorities. The press didn't eat her alive. They didn't need to. They just moved on. And in this space where Miranda had once been magnetic, always quoted, always tagged, there was silence. Heavy, echoing silence. I never had to explain myself. I didn't write a blog post. I didn't give an interview. I didn't tell people what to think. I just let them hear her in her own voice, and they did the rest. Because people can forgive mistakes. But cruelty dressed as confidence? That has a shelf life. A few months later, I ran into one of our cousins at a wedding. She didn't bring up Miranda. She just hugged me and said, "You look like yourself again." And I realized that was the whole point. Not revenge for revenge's sake. Not some dramatic burn. Just space. Clarity. A life that wasn't shaped by someone else's shadow. As for Andrew, I heard he relocated. Started his own creative shop upstate. We never spoke again. I didn't need to. That chapter served its purpose, showing me who I never wanted to be, and who I could become instead. I started writing again. Just privately. Essays. Thoughts. Observations. Things I used to jot down before Miranda's voice lived in my head. I wasn't trying to go viral. I was just listening to myself, maybe for the first time in years. And one night, as I was cleaning out old files, I found a folder labeled Jess_rebuild. It was everything, the memos, the voice clips, the annotated screenshots. I hovered over it for a long moment. Then I dragged it into the trash and emptied the bin. Because I didn't need it anymore. The final word had already been spoken. She thought taking my voice would leave me invisible. She never imagined I'd use hers to bring everything down.